Hello everyone and welcome to the Hockey Hub. I'm Brennan and today we're doing another video, and today we're going to be discussing who could be the next Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. Now obviously a Canadian team has not won the Stanley Cup since 1993 when the Montreal Canadiens did it, beating the LA Kings in 5 games. Since then, we have seen Canadian teams make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Vancouver's made it twice, both in 94 and 2011. Ottawa made it once in 07 and Calgary made it in 04. But all of these teams ended up losing, and the cup hasn't been brought home to Canada by a Canadian team in a very, very long time. Eventually, this streak has to end. With the amazing talent, for Canadian teams like Connor McDavid, Auston Matthews, Elias Pettersson, eventually this streak has to end. But the question is, who's going to be the Canadian team to do it? So I'm going to be talking about some of the possible candidates to be the next Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup, and why I feel they could be the next ones to do it. Now, I'm not saying that the Toronto Maple Leafs are the favorite to win the Stanley Cup right now for Canada, but they probably are. That being said, I'm not sure if I see them doing it, as they kind of have a playoff choking reputation, and their overall roster isn't exactly built for, just how tough and grinding the playoffs are. They did add pieces like Joe Thornton and Wayne Simmons and Zach Bogosian to give them that added depth and grit, but the fact is that their star players kind of don't end up showing up in the playoffs, and I think they're kind of in need of a change in Toronto. That being said, we're yet to see what they do this season. They are off to a decent start, and they could end up, being the best team from the Canadian division and making it all the way to the conference finals, and that's certainly plausible. I do think that they have the best Canadian roster on paper right now, but time's going to tell whether or not they might be the next team to win. I just don't know if they have a very winning atmosphere there, and it's not to say that any of the Canadian teams really do. I just think that there's, I think some confidence issues with that Toronto team, and I think when the playoffs come, they end up kind of breaking. It's going to be interesting to see if Toronto can ever snap out of this. I think they've definitely got, the experience now to fight their way through the playoffs, but I'm not sure if they're going to be the next Canadian team to do it. So I'm going to say it's probably not going to be Toronto, but they're definitely in and around there as the best. Next up, I want to talk about the Calgary Flames. Now, the Calgary Flames are the Canadian team that is probably the most in win-now mode. Their core is getting older. Some of their pieces are going to hit unrestricted free agency soon, and it kind of feels like time is running out for this Calgary team. They did sign a couple of veterans in Jacob Markstrom and Chris Tanev in the offseason, so I think that kind of accelerates this window for them. Unfortunately, Calgary has kind of struggled in some of the same ways that Toronto has. Calgary hasn't really been able to make it past the first or second round of the playoffs, and they kind of have reputations as playoff chokers. I do think that Calgary has, the grit and the experience to make it through, but once again, there seems to kind of be a problem with that core, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do it. So I probably wouldn't bet on Calgary being the next Canadian team. That being said, I definitely think they're around there, and they're probably my pick to go to the Western, or not necessarily Western, but just conference finals. That being said, I don't think I see them making it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, before I get into the final team that I think could end up being the next Canadian Stanley Cup champion, I do want to talk about my opinions on some of the other teams very quickly. So Ottawa, I don't think that they're going to be the next Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. They do have a very bright and promising future, but that being said, it's still way too early on to say they're going to be the next Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup, and despite the fact that their owner, Eugene Melnyk, thinks so, I don't think most people do. As far as Montreal goes, I'm not sure if they're ever going to be able to win a Stanley Cup with kind of the core they have now, despite the fact that I think they're a good up-and-coming young team. At least as a Montreal fan, I don't really have a lot of hopes in them winning a Stanley Cup anytime soon. I think that they lack that high-end star power, and although guys like Nick Suzuki, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Cole Caulfield could end up being high star-powered forwards, I think, yes, they've got the grit, they've got the experience, they've got the depth, but they lack that game-breaking talent to push them through the playoffs. The Vancouver Canucks, I think, are a franchise that just kind of, they get so close, and yet they're not necessarily able to break that hump. I do think that they have a very promising young core in the likes of Elias Pettersson, Thatcher Demko, and Brock Besser. Bo Horvat is the captain there as well. But that being said, I think that they need a lot of pieces around them to look like a true Stanley Cup contender. They did lose a lot, this past offseason, and although I don't think that these are pieces that will hurt them long term, that being said, I don't think that they have enough great young prospects to say, hey, they are going to be the next dynasty or next cup winners in Canada. I think they're going to be a very good team. I think they're going to be a contender, but they definitely need to make the right moves to get there. They can't just rely on all their prospects coming up, and, they can't just let go of some of their key pieces like they did with Jacob Markstrom. So I think that out of these three teams that I'm kind of quickly going through, Vancouver probably is the best chance to do it. They do have that game-breaking talent, Quinn Hughes obviously being another one. But that being said, Vancouver is another one of those teams that it almost feels like it might not ever come. And finally, getting into the Winnipeg Jets for this quick little segment of teams that I'm going through quickly. So for Winnipeg, I think, their forward core is amazing. Their goaltending obviously really good, but Connor Hellebuyck hasn't really been able to get it done in the playoffs, and the defense simply needs so much work. They do have some good young defensive prospects, but I think their blue line is, just not going to be good enough to ever get them to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think that they are a good team, arguably a great team when you look at their forward core, but right now their defense is so weak that I can't really put them over a team as far as, them being the next Stanley Cup champion in Canada. A few years ago I would have, and I thought that they were easily the favorite to win a Stanley Cup for Canada, but they've seriously lost some pieces, and they are getting older, and obviously the whole Patrick Laine situation hanging over their heads, I think that could end up being a mess for them. But finally, I think the team in Canada that could end up being the next Stanley Cup winner is likely the Edmonton Oilers, and that's why I'm wearing this jersey. I say that simply because I view Connor McDavid as a generational talent, and generational talents always find a way to get their team to the Stanley Cup Finals and win the Stanley Cup. Add in the fact that Leon Draisaitl is there, and he's arguably a top 5 player in the NHL as well, and their star power is just so overpowering to a lot of teams. Edmonton has a lot of work to do to build a good team around them. They do have good pieces like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Kailer Yamamoto, but that being said, Ken Holland does have his work cut out for them. They need to upgrade that blue line, but with guys like Evan Bouchard and Philip Broberg coming in, upgrades should be coming soon through the system. Goaltending is a thing they really need to address, but Edmonton is all over, looking for another goaltender, and I think sooner rather than later they will address that goaltending problem, and I think once they do, they are going to be the next Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup. I think Edmonton, just simply with their star power and with Connor McDavid, he will get there. Connor McDavid will be a Stanley Cup champion. Let's hope I'm not jinxing them, unless you're a Calgary fan, in which that case you're probably hoping I'm jinxing them. But that being said, I think it's probably going to happen for Edmonton eventually, but I don't think a Canadian team is going to win the Stanley Cup within 3 years or anything. I think it still might take Edmonton a bit. I still think all these teams have some building to do, and even if they are in win-now mode, you look at the other teams in the NHL like Colorado, Tampa, Vegas, I don't know if these teams are good enough to knock those teams out. Obviously, a Canadian team is going to go to the conference final this season, and that's going to be very exciting. I think my pick to go, like I said, would be Calgary, but I wouldn't be surprised if Toronto made it as well. As far as the rest of the division goes, I'm really not sure. So I'm not saying that a Canadian team isn't capable of winning the Stanley Cup this year. I think they actually probably have the best chance that they have in a while with the whole Canadian division and a team being guaranteed into the conference finals. But realistically, I think whatever Canadian team makes it to the conference finals probably gets eliminated since, there's so many powerhouses in the NHL right now like Tampa, Philly, Colorado, and Vegas. So I think that those teams are simply better than all the Canadian teams right now. But I do think, Canada is getting better. It's not going to be a dark period. These Canadian teams, for the most part, are all contenders, and all these fan bases have a lot of reason to be excited. As a fan of most of these teams, I'm really excited as well. Obviously, Vancouver still has an immensely bright future. Montreal is turning some heads, and Winnipeg has some of the best players in the NHL as well, arguably the best goaltender. So there's a reason for optimism for every Canadian team. I do think that every fan base should believe that their team can win a Stanley Cup at one point. I'm just taking arguably a harsh look at the chances of each team winning the Stanley Cup. But that does it for today's video. I appreciate you guys watching till the end. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys later. Bye for now.